Welcome to the HigherEdJobs Podcast. I'm Andy Hibble, the Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders of HigherEdJobs.
And I'm Kelly Sherwin, the Director of Editorial Strategy. Today, we're happy to have Chris Lee back for our Ask the Expert series. Thanks, Chris, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Our question today is, I'm considering doctoral programs to advance my career. What are you seeing in the current job market? Are there more roles requiring EDDs or Ph.D.s in higher ed right now? Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
This one is a multi-layered sort of question. To say what does the market show is kind of too general to have a clear and coherent answer, because it really varies by field or discipline or region type institution. But underneath the question, I think, is a key one that I've heard often over my career, which is people say, hey, should I spend the time and effort to go pursue a doctorate, and how will it help me, advance my career? So in thinking about that is really kind of a hard question to answer because of the many, many factors. First, I'm going to start with the fact that not everyone who starts a doctorate finishes. It's not predictable like a bachelor's degree or a master's degree where you just complete the coursework and you're done. When you finish, you got to do this thing called a dissertation, right? And not everyone finishes those. It's a big pass, fail kind of activity. And the research shows as many as 70% in certain fields don't finish, because they can vary in length from like 4 to 8 or 10 years. So it's a really big commitment. So first question is, do you really want to do that, right? So the why matters. If you're not really committed, you probably won't finish. And, there's a sidebar there too, I think to some degree, because of just the prestige of it, some people try to make it harder than it should be, right? It's kind of like boot camp for me, or, pledging a fraternity, right? The gatekeepers, want to keep the bar really, really high. So you have to think about, do I really want to do that? It's costly, right? Because it's, again, 4 to 6 years, it can be, pretty expensive. So you have to really want to do it. And then the other factor is, will a doctorate open the doors that you want it to open? Not every position, quote, requires a doctorate. They may, prefer a doctorate. So will it open the doors you think it will open? So then it's back to, why are you doing it? Are you doing it for, the cachet of being called a doctor? Are you doing it because other people are doing it? Is it really required in your field? Will it give you a leg up to get that job, and that job produces a certain amount of economic return on your investment? Because it's expensive. So you have to think through all of these factors. And the way I described it is kind of, you have to interrogate yourself to say, hey, why am I doing this? Because along the way in your third year, and you go like, I'm only halfway through and these hours are long and, this is expensive, it's really, really tempting to not go forward, because a lot of people are doing this part-time. As the question implies, a person probably working and they're doing it part-time. So why you're doing it really should be analyzed.
I was going to say, I think you really, Chris, if we stopped recording here, I think you can stop listening if you want to. Let's just be honest. But if you continue to listen, I think one of the interesting parts is cost, because I think that really varies. If you are working full-time at a college or university, having tuition covered or a large part of tuition covered, I do think it changes the calculus a little bit. If the institution is willing to pick up the entire bill or a very good part of the bill, and you have the time and you have the curiosity, maybe it's not a bad thing to explore. I'm speaking as somebody who I'm a proud dropout in a doctoral program. So I can honestly tell you, I thought it was well worth my time. But I had a tuition waiver. I spent a year doing the coursework. I very much enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I felt it was extremely useful to me in my academic journey, but I didn't finish it.
So
but I was no worse off for it.
Absolutely. But, if you just love the stuff, go do it. Absolutely. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about the academy and being curious and stuff like that. I'm totally with you on that. But, the question asking person here was implying they wanted for career advancement, right? And so then, that's a different calculus than I really like learning and, like a history buff. I think, you might be a history buff, Andrew, and like, if you love history and you got an opportunity of studying on a world-class historian, man, that's a cool opportunity. It's free and it's just right down the hall, man. That I would love to, have the time and leisure to do that. But if you're trying to advance your career, you got to make a different calculus.
Looking for more conversations in higher ed? We invite you to join the higher ed military community as we discuss issues, best practices, news, and general trends affecting our institutions and the higher ed military affiliated community. Inspired by the deep commitment to service that veterans and military connected faculty, staff, and leaders have towards the academic community, we at HigherEdJobs established Higher Ed Military as the resource for both original and curated news and information, as well as job opportunities from colleges and universities actively recruiting military-connected professionals. Visit us at higheredmilitary.com on Facebook and LinkedIn. I love what you're both saying. I know, Chris, you emphasized doing the research and why. Andy, you're talking about the cost, the financial cost, but also we have to consider the costs, time away from your family, cost of maybe if you are working, is it interfering with how you're performing in your jobs? There's so many other costs that factor into this.
Yeah, and I didn't think about that.
And the easy part for me was I was an extremely young person in my 20s with time on my hands. So it's a very, very, that would have been very, very different if I had a family at that point. So absolutely, Kelly. Like, it's easy and glib for me to say that, but at that stage in life, if it's there's a lot of different circumstances. I agree on the career side of this. Like, if you're looking to do this to advance your career, there's a lot of monetary and non-monetary costs for potential gain. And I would say there's some positions where it's absolutely necessary, but I don't think not having a PhD is going to limit your career long-term in academia.
Yep. Except in some environments where people have a pretty big prestige overlay to, how they see things. And so it matters, right? The institution matters and the type doctorate matters. So, the quote gatekeepers are people who decide on who to let into, their private club or their, or hire for certain positions. They want to know what type doctorate sometimes, whether it's a practical doctorate like an Ed.D or DVM, or is it a Ph.D. Most people don't really understand and appreciate the difference, but the gatekeepers tend to, right? They tend to know and they have value judgments over certain kinds of programs and certain kinds of degrees and certain kinds of institutions. So just have to say that because those factors come into play. For faculty, it's easy. A gentleman said to my colleagues and I when I was a doctoral student, you would never teach at a school more prestigious than the one you graduated from. And that is very close to being accurate. You can look at the details in the background. I think the exceptions are when people just are way above their peers and their accomplishments and things like that. So that's a factor. And if you're in a regional area and XYZ university has a different reputation than, ABC University, people know that, and that could affect your career potential, which takes us back to the beginning. Why are you doing that? And do you know that this particular degree from this particular institution is going to open the doors that you want it to open? Is it the type degree, type program, discipline, all of those? And so it's a really complex question. It's not a yes and no question.
I think this is a great conversation. It's a complex question, and we really touched on a lot of points. Bottom line, you have to know why.
You have to know why.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for listening. And if you have a question for Chris or one of our other experts, please email us at podcast@higheredjobs.com or direct message us on X @HigherEdCareers. We look forward to talking soon.